Around the time of Jesus' return, amidst the outpouring of the bowls of God's wrath, there's a major battle described in Revelation, as demonic spirits from the Antichrist and false prophet gather the kings of the world to fight against Jerusalem. It's often referred to as the Battle of Armageddon, as that's the name of the place where the troops gather. After the interlude describing the fall of Babylon in Revelation 17 and 18, chapter 19 continues with the description of the battle between the Antichrist and his armies and Jesus at his return. Revelation's not the only place in the Bible where this battle's mentioned, as John's vision is built on several prophets' description of this event. Zechariah describes this time, when the nations fight against Jerusalem and Jesus fights for them. Joel repeats that the nations around Israel will attack, all within God's plan and control. Ezekiel describes what has become known as the Battle of Gog and Magog, which prophesies that the Antichrist will bring many nations to come and fight against Israel in the last days, again being described within God's plan and leading. God says that several prophets had spoken about Gog, who is understood to be the Antichrist, invading Israel. There's an obvious tension between God bringing the Antichrist against Israel and God being against the Antichrist. God's sovereignty is complex, and we need to trust him even though we don't understand. God's control over the Antichrist presents him like an end-times pharaoh, who God controlled to achieve his purposes. There'll be a coalition of nations with the Antichrist, some of which are specifically named, though the list may not be exhaustive. The nations seem to be in the Middle East and North Africa, but we won't get into the specifics in this short video. It's possible that not all of Israel's neighbours will agree with the Antichrist's invasion. Although it's clear that this battle ends when Jesus comes back, there's some debate about when it starts, as Israel's described as being at peace when it starts and recently recovered from war. Therefore, it could be that the battle starts at the beginning of the Great Tribulation and continues throughout it. The battle initially results in some being exiled and in many deaths. Several scriptures describe that the Antichrist is given permission by God to persecute and overcome Israel and believers in the end times. When it seems all hope is lost, Jesus will return. The battle ends by Jesus defeating the Antichrist and his armies, described as God's wrath being poured out on them, and includes end-of-the-age language. The fact that the Battle of Gog and Magog and the Battle of Armageddon end in the same way give us a clue that they're the same battle. God's enemies are not going to try and invade Jerusalem twice during the Great Tribulation, and experience the age-ending wrath of God twice. Also, the fact that at the end of both battles, the Antichrist's army are fed on by carrion birds and wild animals confirm that they are in fact the same event. Confusion arises about the timing of the Battle of Gog and Magog, because after the millennial reign of Jesus, Satan is released and manages to gather an army for battle, and Gog and Magog are mentioned again. They march against Jerusalem, but this battle is different to the one described before the millennial reign. It's over even before it begins. Fire consumes God's enemies, and Satan's thrown into the lake of fire. So, Gog and Magog may simply refer to any massive Satan-led attack on God's people, rather than meaning that this pre- and post-millennial battle is the same event. All this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Please like and subscribe for more Bible nuggets from a Hebraic perspective.